Welcome to the second session of our study on the Apocrypha, the Daniel editions. In this session, we'll spend some time discussing the background material and the time period during which the story unfolded, as well as the period during which most current scholars think the narrative was put into its final form. We'll read the back half of the prayer of Azariah, called the Song of the Three Jews, or sometimes the Hymn of the Three Young Men. We begin this session with a quick review of last week's session, but after a word of prayer. O God, our Father, open our eyes and enlighten our minds as we study your word. So grant that our minds may know your truth, and our hearts may feel your love, and then confirm and strengthen our wills that we may go out to live what we have learned. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. In the first session, we talked a little bit about the books of the Apocrypha. We said that they came from the Septuagint, a Greek version of the Hebrew Bible that was mostly completed in the 2nd century BCE. These were the books that ultimately were not accepted as scriptural by the Jewish religion and not officially added by the Roman Catholic Church to the scriptures until the 16th century CE. Many Protestant churches used the books of the Apocrypha in their lectionaries, but not as part of their official canon. We also told the story of the first 3 chapters of the book of Daniel, most of those. Daniel and his friends Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were young Jewish men who had been taken captive by the Babylonians who had conquered Judah. And they were moved to exile in Babylonia along with thousands of other Jews. The 4 friends had gone through a training program and became servants of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon. Daniel was able to impress the king with his ability to interpret dreams and was given a high position within his kingdom. Later, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah refused to worship a golden statue erected by King Nebuchadnezzar and were thrown into a fiery furnace and left to die. We read the prayer that Azariah prayed from the fiery furnace, praising God, admitting the sins of his community, and accepting his fate, while affirming his trust in his Lord. The book of Daniel is set in the time of the exile, which began in the early 6th century. After the death of King Solomon, Israel was divided into 2 nations, Israel in the north and Judah in the south. The northern kingdom of Israel was conquered by Assyria in 722 BCE, and the people killed or scattered, and the nation of Israel basically disappeared from the face of the earth. Assyria was one of the major powers in the area through much of the 8th and 7th century. But Egypt, Babylon, and Media grew stronger toward the end of the 7th century. At the Battle of Carchemish in 605, the armies of Egypt, allied with the remnants of the Assyrian Empire, were defeated by the armies of Babylonia, allied with the Medes, the Persians, and the Scythians. Babylon became the new big dog in the Near East. After the Battle of Carchemish, Judah's king Jehoiakim began paying tribute to Babylon. However, after 4 years he stopped, and in 597, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, laid siege to Jerusalem. King Jehoiakim died during the siege, and his successor, Jeconiah, and his court were exiled to Babylon, along with many others. Zedekiah, Jeconiah's successor, revolted against Babylon because he expected protection from the Egyptians. Jeremiah and others warned against the revolt to no avail. Jerusalem was again besieged, and many of the people of Jerusalem starved to death. In 586, the city walls were destroyed, many of the houses and much of the city was destroyed, including the temple. Zedekiah was captured, his sons were killed in front of him, he was blinded and taken to Babylon. Some Jewish survivors were allowed to stay in Jerusalem and the surrounding land of Judea. Many were killed, and many were carried off to exile in Babylon. After Cyrus the Great of Persia attacked and defeated the Babylonians in 539, he allowed some Jews to return to Jerusalem in the following year and begin the rebuilding process. A smaller temple was completed in 515, beginning what is called the Second Temple period. The Ark of the Covenant, housed in the original temple, was never recovered. The exile and the period immediately before and after the exile seem to have been a pivotal period for the Jewish religion. According to 2 Kings, a law code was discovered in the temple in 621 BCE. This law code was authenticated as the word of the Lord by Huldah, the prophetess, and Josiah, who was the Judean king at the time, aligned the reform he had begun with the terms of this law. Deuteronomic law and the theology expressed in that law played a major role in the shaping of Israel and its scriptures in the exile and post-exile period. There is evidence that the destruction of the temple in 586 gave rise to synagogues, both in Jerusalem and in Babylon, for public worship and religious instruction. The focus shifted from animal sacrifices, which could only be performed at the temple, to the study and eventually the teaching of the Torah, which became the focal point of worship in the synagogues. There was no longer a temple, and there was plenty of opportunity for them to assimilate to the Babylonian culture, but the Jews exiled in Babylon were allowed to continue to practice their religion. A new class of professional clergy was created within Judaism during this period, the rabbis. The rabbi was both a scholar and a teacher, a spiritual leader tasked with explaining God's expectations to the common people. Early rabbis compiled the Talmud, a series of writings that further explain the Torah, beginning during the early exile period. Even after the temple was rebuilt, many aspects of Jewish worship that began during the captivity continued. These include the prominent use of singing of psalms, prayer, and instruction as part of the synagogue service. Synagogue worship and rabbinical teaching continued to operate alongside the newly constructed temple after 515. Most scholars believe that the early Hebrew religion was henotheistic, one god per nation, or polytheistic, many gods, before the Babylonian exile. The Jewish people acknowledged the existence of other gods, but believed that they should only worship the God of Israel. A new teaching common to all the classical prophets from the late 8th century through the return from exile is known as monotheism. There is only one God, and it became central to Judaism. For a couple minutes, we're going to go back to the post-exilic period. If you remember, Persia defeated Babylon in 539 and allowed some of the Jews to return to Judah, where they eventually rebuilt the temple some 20 years later. Persia dominated the Near East for 200 years. Then Alexander the Great of Macedonia conquered the Persian Empire in 334 BCE. Alexander died 11 years later, and his empire was divided into 4 parts, 2 of which controlled the area around Jerusalem at different times for the next 150 years. The Kingdom of Ptolemy, which included Egypt, and the Seleucid Empire, which comprised present-day Iran, Iraq, and Syria. The Ptolemies allowed for Judaism in Jerusalem to flourish with very little intervening in the 3rd century BCE. But early in the 2nd century, in 198, the Seleucid Empire defeated the Ptolemies, taking control of all Judea. As the Seleucid Empire expanded, so did their promotion of Hellenism, Greek culture that is. The Seleucids under Antiochus III controlled much of the Arabian Peninsula, forcibly converting much of its populace to Greek culture and religion, and that continued as they captured Jerusalem. The already strained relations between the pious Jewish people that did not accept Hellenism and the Seleucid Empire were shattered when Antiochus IV, Epiphanes, adopted his father's policy of universal Hellenization, but took it to new heights. He wanted to enforce Greek culture on all the Jewish population. A short-lived rebellion took place, and when this was put down, Antiochus IV's views were hardened. He defiled the Holy Temple, vandalizing it and erecting an idol on the altar. Altars to Greek gods and idols were placed in every town, and those who did not pray to them and convert from practicing Judaism were put to death. The practice led to Maccabean revolt in the 160s. The outcome of the revolt was the formation of the Hasmonean dynasty, an autonomous Jewish rule over Palestine that would last a generation. The hopes of the Jewish monarchy were revived, so too was the freedom to practice the Jewish religion. In 63 BCE, the Roman general Pompey captured Jerusalem, and the Romans ruled through a local client king for hundreds of years. They destroyed the temple in 70 CE and again exiled much of the population. So we have a history of domination of Judah by outside forces, from Babylon to Persia to Alexander, whose death divided the powers between the Ptolemies and the Seleucids, and finally the Romans. There seem to be a number of historical inaccuracies in the book of Daniel, things that don't mesh with the story I just told you. Among them is the claim that King Jehoiakim had been captured and taken to Babylon in exile. Jehoiakim actually died during the siege, and his successor, Jeconiah, was taken captive. The date of Nebuchadnezzar's first attack on Judah in the book of Daniel is inconsistent with Jeremiah's account or of any other account in the Bible or in the Babylonian Chronicle. Belshazzar, discussed in chapter 5 of the book of Daniel, was not the son of Nebuchadnezzar, but the son of Nabonius, and Belshazzar was never a king of Babylon. The book of Daniel says the city of Babylon fell to Darius the Mede. It was actually defeated by Cyrus, the king of Persia. The Medes were a powerful nation during this period, but they weren't the ones who attacked and defeated Babylon. We'll talk about some of the other inconsistencies later, but it is the inaccurate information in the book of Daniel that is one reason many of today's scholars think the book was written much later than the 6th century setting that is claimed in the book. If the author of Daniel had lived through these events, it's assumed he wouldn't have made these mistakes. On the other side of the coin, the visions or prophecies in the last half of Daniel are accurate depictions of the history of the rule of the Ptolemies and the Seleucids, who ruled from the late 4th century until 165 BCE. The accuracy stops short when the author describes the death of Antiochus in the 3rd campaign against Egypt. The timing leads modern scholars to conclude that the book of Daniel was written in the 2nd century following the first 2 campaigns, but prior to Antiochus's death. This would make the date of the conclusion of the book of Daniel about 160 BCE. The point of all this is not to try to say that the stories described in the book of Daniel are all fiction, but that the stories, while nominally describing the tyrant king Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, may more accurately be a critique of the Seleucid king Antiochus IV, who ruled over the Near East region that included Israel in the 2nd century. The assumption is that the book of Daniel was written in the period just before the Maccabean revolt against Antiochus IV Epiphanes. This doesn't change the story, but it may change the way we read the story. With that historical context, we're now going to turn back to the book of Daniel. In the first session of this study, we discussed the dream that Daniel interpreted for the king. In his interpretation, Daniel described 4 kingdoms: an eternal kingdom and a large stone. The 4th empire and the eternal kingdom are also discussed in chapter 7 of Daniel. Readers of Daniel have found multiple options for identifying these kingdoms or empires. There is also an arch-tyrant in the visions of chapters 7, 8, 9, and 11 that scholars have attempted to identify. All these mysteries have challenged scholars and casual observers of the book for centuries. The 4 periods that have been proposed as the time for the culmination of history that Daniel refers to are: number 1, the 2nd century BCE. Number 2, the 1st century CE. 3, a future time distant from the interpreter's present. And finally, number 4, the interpreter's near future, the immediate future. The first option assumes the climax would occur with the demise of Antiochus IV Epiphanes, who persecuted the Jews in the mid-2nd century BCE. This view advocated by most contemporary commentaries, that is, most modern scholars. The 4th empire would then be identified as the Hellenistic kingdoms that succeeded Alexander, the Ptolemies, and the Seleucids. Alexander's kingdom is the divided kingdom, and the arch-tyrant would be Antiochus IV Epiphanes. In the second option, the 4th empire is Rome, and the climax is the coming of Jesus Christ. The arch-tyrant common to many who possess this version would be the Antichrist, who will appear at the time of the consummation. In the 16th century, some Christians identified the arch-tyrant as the Pope or as Muhammad. Option 3 is not a common projection today, but Hippolytus, who died in 247 CE, thought the millennium would begin 500 years after the coming of Christ. That is a long way off from his lifetime. Various ways have been derived to make Daniel appear to be a book that speaks of the interpreter's own time and to promise that consummation is near. To simply say that they've all been wrong so far hasn't deterred others from continuing to make similar calculations for their own time. There are two primary options for identifying the four kingdoms described in the dream that Daniel interpreted. The first would be Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. This is the traditional explanation. Those are the first kingdom, the four kingdoms. The second, the one accepted by most scholars today, is Babylon, Medes, the inferior kingdom, Persia, Alexander's kingdom, divided after his death. The obvious problem here is that the Median Empire did not intervene chronologically between the Babylonian and the Persian kingdoms. However, the book of Daniel explicitly states that in chapter 5 and 6 that the kings of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, and Belshazzar were followed by Darius the Mede. The fact that the authors of Daniel got their history wrong doesn't negate the idea that the Medes came between the Babylonians and Persians. On the contrary, it supports the idea that the author of Daniel thought the Medes were the second kingdom in the dream. The guy who wrote the book thought the Medes were the inferior kingdom. And if the fourth kingdom was supposed to be a divided kingdom, which fits Alexander's divided empire, why would anyone challenge that? The obvious reason is that for Christians it makes a much better story if we can somehow tie the dreams and visions in Daniel to the coming of Jesus and the Christ. And Jesus arrived during the reign of Rome. Ergo, Rome must be the fourth kingdom. Eliminating the Medes makes the Romans the fourth kingdom. Fits the Jesus narrative much better. We've wandered off a long way from the Song of the Three Jews, which is our primary topic today. But we said in the first session that we intended to explore some of the controversy related to the interpretation of Daniel. This is one of the places that exploration takes us. But now on to the Song of the Three Jews. So we're still in the fiery furnace. Azariah has just completed his prayer. The king is still waiting for his three prisoners to die. And we read verses 23 through 25. Now the king's servants who threw them in kept stoking the furnace with naphtha, pitch, tow, and brushwood. And the flames poured out above the furnace 49 cubits, and spread out and burned those Chaldeans who were caught near the furnace. 49 cubits is 71 feet. Of course, 49 is 7 times 7, and we remember Nebuchadnezzar ordered the furnace to be heated to 7 times its usual temperature. So the 49 is probably a play on that multiple. We go on with 26 through 28. But the angel of the Lord came down into the furnace to be with Azariah and his companions, and drove the fiery flame out of the furnace, and made the inside of the furnace as though a moist wind were whistling through it. The fire did not touch them at all, and caused them no pain or distress. Then the three, with one voice, praised and glorified and blessed God in the furnace. So the protecting angel is common in the Second Temple period writing. Tobit had a protecting angel, as did Susanna and Enoch. All of these are within the Apocrypha. But here we begin. The prayer or the song of the three, 29 through 32. Blessed are you, O Lord God of our ancestors, and to be praised and highly exalted forever. And blessed is your glorious holy name, and to be highly praised and highly exalted forever. Blessed are you in the temple of your holy glory, and to be extolled and highly glorified forever. Blessed are you who took into the depths from your throne the cherubim, and to be praised and highly exalted forever. The song begins with a direct address to God. The cherubim in verse 32 are winged creatures who serve as God's throne. Verses 33 through 35. Blessed are you who on the throne of your kingdom, and to be extolled and highly exalted forever. Blessed are you in the firmament of heaven, and to be sung and glorified forever. Bless the Lord, all you works of the Lord. Sing praise to him, and highly exalt him forever. So we begin here a litany of praise. We go on to a series of exhortations, which is an address or communication emphatically urging someone to do something. We begin with an exhortation to the heavens, verses 36 through 41. Bless the Lord, you heavens, sing praise to him, and highly exalt him forever. Bless the Lord, you angels of the Lord, sing praise to him, and highly exalt him forever. Bless the Lord, all you waters above the heavens, sing praise to him, and highly exalt him forever. Bless the Lord, all you powers of the Lord, sing praise to him, and highly exalt him forever. Bless the Lord, sun and moon, sing praise to him, and highly exalt him forever. Bless the Lord, stars of heaven, sing praise to him, and highly exalt him forever. So here the song asks the heavens and the angels and the waters above the heavens, the powers, the sun and the moon, the stars, the heavens, to praise and exalt the Lord. We go on with 42 through 46. Bless the Lord, all rain and dew, sing praise to him, and highly exalt him forever. Bless the Lord, all you winds, sing praise to him, and highly exalt him forever. Bless the Lord, fire and heat, sing praise to him, and highly exalt him forever. Bless the Lord, winter and cold and summer heat, sing praise to him, and highly exalt him forever. Bless the Lord, dews and falling snow, sing praise to him, and highly exalt him forever. Now it's the rain and the dew, the winds, the fire and the heat, the cold, the snow, and the dews again, all exhorted to exalt the Lord. Next we have the exhortations to nature. And this starts with verses 47 through 51. Bless the Lord, nights and days, sing praise to him, and highly exalt him forever. Bless the Lord, light and darkness, sing praise to him, and highly exalt him forever. Bless the Lord, ice and cold, sing praise to him, and highly exalt him forever. Bless the Lord, frosts and snows, and sing praise to him, and highly exalt him forever. Bless the Lord, lightnings and clouds, sing praise to him, and highly exalt him forever. So here we have the exhortation to nights and days, light and darkness, lightning and clouds. Go on with 52 through 55. Let the earth bless the Lord. Let it sing praise to him, and highly exalt him forever. Bless the Lord, mountains and hills, sing praise to him, and highly exalt him forever. Bless the Lord, all that grows in the ground, sing praise to him, and highly exalt him forever. Bless the Lord, seas and rivers, sing praise to him, and highly exalt him forever. Now the exhortation to earth and its creatures, verses 56 through 59 is next. Bless the Lord, you springs, sing praise to him, and highly exalt him forever. Bless the Lord, you whales, and all that swim in the waters, sing praise to him, and highly exalt him forever. Bless the Lord, all birds of the air, sing praise to him, and highly exalt him forever. Bless the Lord, all wild animals and cattle, sing praise to him, and highly exalt him forever. So we've had just the earth itself, the mountains and hills, and all that grows, the seas, the rivers, that are asked to exalt the Lord. And now we've had the exhortations to earth and its creatures. Now we go on with verses 60 through 65. Bless the Lord, all the people on earth, sing praise to him, and highly exalt him forever. Bless the Lord, O Israel, sing praise to him, and highly exalt him forever. Bless the Lord, you priests of the Lord, sing praise to him, and highly exalt him forever. Bless the Lord, you servants of the Lord, sing praise to him, and highly exalt him forever. Bless the Lord, spirits and souls of the righteous. Sing praise to him and highly exalt him forever. Bless the Lord, you who are holy and humble in heart. Sing praise to him and highly exalt him forever. So we've gotten down to people, to fellow human beings. And finally, the last few verses, the exhortation to humanity as a whole, verses 66 through 68. Bless the Lord, Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael. Sing praise to him and highly exalt him forever. For he has rescued us from Hades and saved us from the power of death and delivered us from the midst of the burning fiery furnace. From the midst of the fire he has delivered us. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his mercy endures forever. All who worship the Lord bless the God of gods. Sing praise to him and give thanks to him, for his mercy endures forever. We can, of course, see that most of this type of hymn or song might be applied at any time. These exhortations to the heavens, to nature, to the earth, its creatures, to all humanity, could be prayers that we sing at any time. It's only these last few verses that we hear about a fiery furnace. The three young men acknowledge that they have been saved from death. Azariah means that the Lord has helped. Hananiah means the Lord is gracious. And Mishael means, who is God? At this point, we're going to finish the third chapter of Daniel, verses 24 through 30. So let's read from back to the book of Daniel, 24 through 30. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished and rose up quickly. He said to his counselors, was it not 3 men that we threw bound into the fire? They answered the king, true, O king. He replied, but I see 4 men unbound, walking in the middle of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the fourth is the appearance of a god. Nebuchadnezzar then approached the door of the furnace of blazing fire and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out from the fire. And the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the king's counselors gathered together and saw that the fire had not any power over the bodies of those men. The hair of their heads was not singed, their tunics were not harmed, and not even the smell of fire came from them. Nebuchadnezzar said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him. They disobeyed the king's command and yielded up their bodies rather than serve and worship any god except their own God. Therefore I make a decree. Any people, nation, or language that utters blasphemy against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses laid in ruins. For there is no other God who is able to deliver in this way. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. So the book of Daniel goes on for another 9 chapters, about 12 more pages. We're not going to read that right now, but we will summarize it next week. Right now, we're going to go back to the Song of the Three Jews. The Song of the Three Jews, or the Hymn of the Three Young Men, has allusions to numerous psalms and prophetic passages in its exhortations to the heavens, to nature, to earth, to its creatures, and humanity. Unlike the book of Daniel and the prayer of Azariah, however, it does not suggest a period of persecution or a time when the temple was either destroyed or profaned. It is only in the last few verses of the song that we hear the young men suggest that their lives were in danger. But it does fit well with the overall theology of the book of Daniel. The book of Daniel aims to strengthen and encourage Jews who are under pressure to compromise or abandon their religion, just as these 3 young men were asked to do. The condition of the Jews in exile in Babylon was not the same as those in Judea at the time most scholars think the book was written. Those in exile in Babylon as minorities were under pressure to assimilate and take advantage of the opportunities that assimilation offered. They weren't forced to assimilate. Daniel and his 3 friends were given an education, offered the opportunity to participate in governing Babylon. For Judeans in the 160s, during the reign of Antiochus IV, the choice was more life or death. Do you want to become a martyr, or do you want to assimilate? The stories in Daniel all take place in the court of the great king, who, along with his gods, claims to be in charge. When some Jews refuse to go along, they're sentenced to death, but then vindicated. The king is forced to admit the greatness of their God. The king and all his courtiers are baffled by a strange dream that only a Jew and his God can explain. And the king is forced to admit to the remarkable power of the Jewish God, of Yahweh, of the Lord. We'll see the same message in the visions in the second half of the book of Daniel. And the circumstances you see around you may challenge your beliefs, but there is a truth about reality that you cannot see now. Someone else is actually in charge, the Lord. Your job is to remain faithful and believe. And you may live to see vindication. The stories of Daniel try to be realistic. Azariah prays even though he doesn't know he will ever leave the fiery furnace. The three young Jews pray to their God and sing praises even though they know they may yet die. They believe God will save them, but they know God is free and may choose something else. That makes no difference. They will do what is right because it is right. They will sing praises to God regardless of the circumstances. There is no threat of persecution early in the book of Daniel. The heroes are depicted as very successful people. The story is concerned with what it means to live as a minority in an alien culture. It could be relevant whether the reader lived in the diaspora, or in, say, Alexandria or Babylon, or in Judea under the control of the Persian or the Ptolemies or the early Seleucids. What is it like for a Jew or a Muslim or a Hindu to live in Dallas in the 21st century? What is it like for a native of Mexico or the child of an immigrant from Honduras or Vietnam or an African American or a person of Chinese descent? Having lost the wars against Assyria and Babylonia, and then to find themselves at the mercy of the Persians and then the Hellenistic kings, what did this tell them about their claims that their God Yahweh was the creator of the heavens and the earth and sovereign over all of history? Next week, we'll tell the stories from chapter 4 through 6 of Daniel, including Daniel in the lion's den, then tell the stories of the visions in chapter 7 through 12. This will be an overview. We won't cover a lot of the details in all these visions. You are certainly welcome to read all these on your own, but we won't do it in this study. The whole book of Daniel is not long. It's only about 16 pages, depending on what Bible you look at. Then we will go on to read Susanna. Susanna is just over 60 verses, but it has a narrative format. It's a story, not like a prayer or a hymn like we've just finished. So that sounds like a lot, but the video should still be about 30 minutes. So keep your masks on, stay safe. See you Monday.